The dreaded call to yard duty echoed through my in-laws' house. Time for some outdoor sprucing, dear. My mother-in-law's voice, usually warm, took on a decidedly managerial tone, especially around Christmas. Chores, endless chores, would culminate in a gentle, but firm, eviction to the yard. It was a tough pill to swallow at first, this servant-in-training routine. But hey, what's a woman to do? Wife duty called, and Christmas meant surviving a few hours of solo yard time. So, I settled in, counting down the minutes until I could escape back to the comfort of home. Okay, so picture this. Me, Ariel, 27, office dweller by day, homebody by choice on weekends. Not exactly the social butterfly, more like a shy caterpillar, though butterflies are pretty cool too. Big crowds drain my energy faster than a vampire at a blood bank. Meeting Tom, my now husband, was a godsend at one such social gathering. This get-together turned into a full-blown party with strangers galore. My introvert senses were screaming for an escape pod. That's when Tom swooped in, knight in shining. Well, maybe a t-shirt this time. He, unlike me, probably thrives on crowds. Yet there he was, my personal oasis in a social storm. We chatted about anything and everything, and when it came time for the after-party stampede, he subtly suggested, "Home sounds pretty good right now, doesn't it?" Music to my introverted ears. Leaving early felt like a victory lap, not a social retreat. Dating Tom was a breeze. The kind and reliable guy I met never wavered. Being the homebody I am, he surprised me with hidden gems. Breathtaking views I never knew existed. Always the gentleman. His arm was always offered for a walk, and in 2 years, not a single argument ruffled our lovey-dovey feathers. But then came marriage, and things shifted gears. Maybe it was inevitable. From girlfriend to wife to, well, that's where things got a little, shall we say, interesting. The door creaks open, and in walks my husband, Tom. Cue the classic greeting. Dinner ready, shower prepped. Now, I'm no culinary whiz, but I hold down a full-time job, thankfully, no overtime. Sometimes his arrival throws a wrench in the dinner and shower schedule. Hold tight, honey, it'll be ready soon, I assure him, scurrying around the kitchen in a mini-chef frenzy. If things aren't magically materialized upon his arrival, a theatrical sigh escapes his lips, followed by a strategic plop on the couch. Prime TV watching position. Variety is the spice of life, or so I thought. Beef stew, delicious, but apparently not for the umpteenth night in a row. Accusations of domestic laziness would swiftly follow. Helping out in the kitchen, forget about it. His contribution to the chore symphony. A permanent exhibition of rogue socks under the sofa. Here's the thing. Cohabitation came as a surprise. We never shared a living space before marriage. This after happily ever after was a stark contrast to the considerate Tom I knew during our courtship. Feeling completely blindsided, I doubled down on self-improvement, convinced it was my fault for being a domestic dud. This nagging self-doubt grew louder with every visit to his parents' house. An hour drive turned into a nerve-wracking journey, often resulting in a sleepless pre-visit night. Step into the in-law zone. Buckle up, buttercup. My father-in-law, Eric, practically blends into the furniture, his nose perpetually buried in the newspaper. The only sound escaping him is a mumbled coffee, directed at Mary, my ever-efficient mother-in-law. It's like a choreographed dance. Request, retrieve, repeat. Guess Tom inherited that expectation. Mary's a force of nature, a talkative powerhouse who's been holding down the home front for years. My attempts at domesticity, well, let's just say they paled in comparison to her ninja-like efficiency. Every visit was a masterclass in how to get things done, according to Mary, complete with a healthy dose of side-eye and a running commentary of my dawdling. Faster with those veggies, Ariel, became my unwelcome kitchen anthem. The worst part, the feeling of Mary's silent disapproval growing with each visit. I'd trip over myself to be helpful, only to be met with a verbal lashing. My pleas to Tom for backup fell on deaf ears. His solution: just be quicker. Mom doesn't usually get that mad. Thanks, honey. That's super helpful. One particularly tear-inducing Christmas Eve, I snapped. This is insane. I can't take the constant criticism. From now on, I'm out. You handle it, Mary. I'll just tell you what to do. Apparently, even Mary has her limits on public scolding. A defeated sigh escaped her lips, followed by a simple, "All right, I understand." Cue the waterworks. I practically ran and hid in the bathroom, a puddle of guilt and self-loathing. The worst part, even after taking on all the chores myself, the scolding continued. Apologies became my default setting, while Tom and Eric continued their spectator sport. It was a never-ending cycle of criticism and compliance, leaving me feeling utterly alone. Christmas at the in-laws was like a full-on family circus, and guess who was the designated clown? Yep, yours truly, with 3 rambunctious brothers-in-law and a jet-setting sister-in-law, who only graced us with her presence once a year, conveniently at her in-laws' house, not ours. The pressure was on. Mary, bless her Martha Stewart's soul, transformed the house into a winter wonderland every Christmas Eve. Deep cleaning, a roast turkey fit for a king, and enough food to feed a small army. It was a Herculean effort. The first year, I was a wide-eyed newbie, happy to help. But this year, as the sole soldier in the chore wars, the mere thought of it sent shivers down my spine. Fast forward to Christmas Eve. Grocery bags overflowing, I practically needed a forklift to unload the car. Windows first. Mary barked, wasting no time in deploying me into cleaning duty. One task morphed into another. Dusting, mopping, whipping up lunch. By nightfall, I was a walking zombie. The scolding continued, a relentless soundtrack to my exhaustion. Pick up the pace, Ariel. We'll be cleaning all Christmas at this rate. Finally, blessed silence descended as I finished the last window. But wait, there's more. The turkey needed its royal roast treatment. The kitchen needed cleaning. Before I knew it, the clock struck midnight. Tomorrow's feast. Not even a thought in my sleep-deprived brain. Enter Sally, the elusive sister-in-law, gracing us with her presence just in time for bed. Food needs to be ready by 11 a.m. sharp, she declared before disappearing into dreamland. Meanwhile, my husband and Eric were already snoring symphonies. Tears streamed down my face as I spent the night in a desperate scramble to prep the meal. Sally probably started prepping days ago, not hours. Expecting me to single-handedly recreate a culinary masterpiece was, well, unreasonable. Part of me understood the wife's duty thing, but the other part just wanted to curl up in a ball and cry. Dawn arrived, finding me bleary-eyed but determined. The clock ticked, the pressure mounted, but somehow, I pulled it off. Everything was ready by 11 a.m. sharp. Relief washed over me, a bittersweet victory in the face of exhaustion and unfair expectations. The feast was a success, or so the chorus of this is delicious," from my brothers-in-law seemed to indicate, just as I envisioned myself finally collapsing onto a chair. In a post-dinner coma, Mary's voice boomed through the room. "Hold on a sec, Ariel. Family bonding time is over. Chore duty awaits." She thrust a broom into my hand with the enthusiasm of a knight handing off his trusty sword. Disbelief turned to a shiver as I stepped outside. The North Pole had nothing on the in-laws' backyard that day. Without even a coat, I was reduced to a chattering symphony of teeth and sniffles. Duty calls, I mumbled through chattering jaws, trying to justify the popsicle I was rapidly becoming. 3 freaking hours. That's how long it took for the exile to be lifted. By the time I was allowed back inside, I could barely move, let alone feel my toes. But guess what Mary had waiting for me? Yep, more chores. Dishes piled high, a sink overflowing. The fun never ends. A sliver of hope flickered, the promise of escape. My husband and I had to be back at work the next day, which meant this torture session had an end date. fueled by the thought of a warm bed and a steaming cup of cocoa in my own home. I soldiered on. The car ride home was a tearful blur. Is this what every Christmas has to be like? I choked out, exhaustion and resentment battling for dominance in my voice. My husband's response: a gem for the ages. Just be more efficient next year. Maybe wear more heat pads and skip the waterworks. Bad Christmas karma, you know. At that moment, the line between dislike and full-blown resentment for him became a blurry mess. The cold I caught from my involuntary outdoor ice sculpture impersonation turned my remaining Christmas break into a bedridden nightmare. And guess what? This wasn't a one-time deal. Every visit to the in-laws was a carbon copy of this Christmas catastrophe. The next year, armed with pre-made dishes, strategic mistake number 1, and a stockpile of disposable heating pads, confiscated by Mary, of course, I naively hoped for a slightly less Dickensian experience. But no such luck. My culinary creations were deemed too salty, and the heating pads, perfect for church, Mary declared, gleefully swiping my only defense against the Arctic tundra. Needless to say, sleep was once again a distant dream, replaced by the relentless cycle of cleaning, cooking, and criticism. Banished to the tundra yet again. Check. Shivering like a penguin in a parka? Double check. This time, however, I wasn't alone in my misery. Snowflakes swirled around me, painting the yard a pristine white, beautiful, except for the fact that I was supposed to be cleaning it, not admiring it. Suddenly, a small figure emerged from the house. Wow! Snow! A little boy, eyes wide with wonder. Hold on, shouldn't kids be, inside? Before I could voice my concerns, a voice boomed from the house. Henry, put on your gloves. Turns out, a surprise guest had arrived while I was on popsicle patrol. Sadie, my elusive sister-in-law, along with her son in tow. Apparently, a marital spat had landed her on her mom's doorstep, not her in-laws this year. The first time I'd seen her since our wedding, 3 years ago. Our reunion was less than ideal. Ariel, is that really you? Her voice held a mix of surprise and concern. Hey, Sally, I mumbled, teeth chattering like Morse code. Clearly, my popsicle impression wasn't winning any awards. Sensing my distress, Sally dug into her pockets and pulled out a pack of disposable heating pads. Lifesavers in disguise. Goodness, you're freezing. Why on earth are you outside? Her concern was a balm to my shivering soul. Yard duty, I croaked. Wife duties, Sally's eyes narrowed. Yard duty, nonsense. Get inside, both of you. She practically shoved me and Henry through the door, her mama bear instincts in full force. The living room was a scene straight out of a sitcom, everyone pretending nothing was wrong. Sally marched right up to my husband and the others. What's going on here? Ariel was freezing outside. What if she got sick? Her voice cut through the awkward silence. Mom just asked her to do a chore. My husband shrugged, nonchalantly. A chore? Tom, are you serious? Don't you see anything wrong with this? Sally's gaze flickered to Mary, her mother. And Mom, what's your explanation? Eric, ever the master of avoidance, pretended deep concentration on a newspaper. The brothers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Mary, the picture of wounded innocence, huffed. A son's wife should help out around the house. Sally threw her hands up in exasperation. There's no such thing as a son's wife's duty. How can you, of all people, not understand that? This is outrageous. I will not stand for this treatment of Ariel. Her voice boomed through the room, a stark contrast to the usual holiday cheer. With a final glare at everyone in the room, Sally grabbed her son's hand and mine. We're out of here, she declared. We stormed out of the house, leaving stunned silence in our wake. A nearby hotel became our impromptu Christmas Eve haven. Soaking in the hotel pool, I poured out my heart to Sally. Tears welled up in her eyes as she listened to my ordeal. Ariel, you've been treated like a servant, not a wife. It's been brutal, but you don't have to live like this anymore. You are free, she said, pulling me into a hug. Her words were a revelation. All this time, I'd endured hardship, believing it was the inevitable fate of a son's wife. Suddenly, I saw it for what it truly was: unacceptable. Tears streamed down my face, a mix of relief and sadness. We emerged from the pool and treated ourselves to a delicious hotel meal. Exhaustion from the sleepless Christmas Eve finally caught up to me, and I drifted off to sleep before I knew it. Waking up, I saw missed calls from my husband, but Sally's advice echoed in my ears. Ignore him. Sightseeing with Sally and her son was a welcome distraction. My phone buzzed with calls from my husband and Mary throughout the day, but I opted for fresh air and freedom over their drama. As evening approached, Sally announced it was time to head home. "Ariel, I've settled the score," she declared. Confusion clouded my face. "Thank you for everything," I stammered, overwhelmed with gratitude. Back at home, I was greeted by a fuming husband. "Where have you been?" "I've been calling like crazy." His concern seemed performative at best. Before I could respond, another bombshell dropped. "The house is sold. Sally's behind it," he stammered. My jaw hit the floor. "What?" I gasped. Turns out Sally had a secret weapon: a husband who was the heir to a national real estate company. Our house, along with the in-laws, had been silently bought by his company. The cherry on top: the in-laws' golden boys, my brothers-in-law, were apparently renters, not homeowners, and their leases were courtesy of the same company. Unable to stomach what had happened at Christmas, Sally had enacted some serious revenge. Our house and the in-laws' house were now on the market, and eviction notices had been delivered to the not-so-golden boys. Within a month, the in-laws were scrambling to find new digs. Their eviction notices weren't a bluff. A wicked chuckle escaped my lips, a sound they probably weren't used to hearing from me. Sally's revenge was glorious, and a part of me couldn't help but be touched that she went to such lengths to defend me. My husband, desperate to salvage the situation, sputtered pleas for intervention. "You have to talk to Sally. She'll listen to you." The nerve of him. "Sure, honey, I'll get right on that," I said, dripping with sarcasm. Picking up the phone, I dialed Mary's number, a mischievous smile playing on my lips. The conversation wasn't pretty, Mary's outrage echoing through the receiver. But as I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Maybe the whole family can live together. I'm used to my husband and Mary, on speakerphone, of course. A cozy tent in the backyard, perhaps. Fresh air and quality time. What more could you ask for? The look on their faces was priceless. "What are you talking about?" My husband spluttered, finally catching on. "The joke's on you," I declared. "Divorce papers are coming your way." With a spring in my step and a suitcase in hand, I headed to my parents' house, a newfound sense of freedom propelling me forward. Sally was the first person I called. "Guess what? We're going solo this time," I announced, a triumphant lilt in my voice. "Hotel, the pool, here we come." Her cheerful response was the perfect soundtrack to my escape. Looking back, I owe Sally a debt of gratitude. Without her intervention, I might have spent years enduring that soul-crushing treatment. The divorce went through, and the in-laws' spacious digs became a distant memory, replaced by a cramped apartment. The shame practically radiated from them, and it was a sight I savored, a little. Sally, ever the enigma, retreated from the spotlight, content with a quiet life. As for me, I blossomed under my parents' roof. Mom was constantly surprised by my newfound domestic skills. Turns out, 3 years of wife duties had turned me into a household pro. The clumsy, inexperienced girl I thought I was had vanished. Sally and I remain close. Our occasional poolside retreats a reminder of the day she helped me reclaim my life. Her strength is an inspiration, and becoming a strong, independent woman like her is my new mission statement. Thanks for watching and being part of this storytelling adventure. Click the subscribe button to support our storytelling channel.